is usually the inverse of that of like, what is the worst thing I can, like, or not worst, but like, not seeking sort of this like meta perfection of a character and just being like, I don't know, what is interesting actually, and like, what is like, I don't know, a real, what feels real.
Zach,
Hi, Caitlin.
so nice to meet you. I am such a
Nice
huge.
to meet you as well.
I love all of your Dimension 20 characters, and then you are for sure one of my favorites on Game Changer and Make Some Noise. So this is so fun.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it's great talking to you. Like your shirt.
Thank you. I can't believe it's only been a week within the game of Fantasy High junior year because so much has happened. It's been 6 episodes.
And it's only been like a week of yeah, I mean, it makes me so exhausted just to think of the schedule of these students.
Right?
I could never not I just feel old now, and so I just remember being that age and being like so tired all the time, and yeah. Oof.
Now you're like, oh, there was a reason for that.
Yeah, yeah. You think about like, yeah, I had to get to school at like I was there at like 7:30 every day. Like one day of school would maybe completely shatter me as an adult. Uh,
What excited you most about returning to the world of Spire and Gorgug at this point in his story?
it's fun to think about what has changed, what hasn't changed over the course of the years. And so it's always fun to come back to a character that I feel like we all know our characters so well from this season just because we've done it so much. And it's just fun to just be able to see the evolution of that and just see like, and when I was in high school, I did change over the years, and it felt like I was kind of honing in on what I liked and trying to figure out what I had space for, what I didn't have space for, and it felt fun to try to explore what that would be like with these characters.
And then I really love that Gorgug is
Oh.
finding as an artificer and a barbarian. What inspired this
Mhm.
for you, and does it kind of connect with his identity as a half orc raised by gnome parents?
Yeah, I think it definitely that starting kind of aesthetic point I think sort of shaped him subconsciously to me, where it was like I guess he does kind of like this stuff and this is sort of around him a lot, while wasn't like so much a thing in the first season. um i think I think it also just felt like fun to explore more intentionally this season, as like I think in the sophomore year, it felt a little like that class came out and I was like, oh, that is kind of cool. And I was just kind of exploring that. And then in going into junior year, it was like, well, it's a pretty bad multi-class kind of, or it doesn't really make a lot of sense on paper. I think there are some that are more obvious than others, but this one was clearly like, when you're raging, you can't do a spell. And like, there's all these like kind of in-game reasons to not do it. But I do think that in real life there are things like that where it's like you're easily going to be able to find reasons why you shouldn't do
Mhm.
something that you like to do. But if you always listen to that, you'll never get to do the things you want to do. And so I thought that would be a fun thing to explore because, Gorgug on paper and in a lot of ways isn't really good at it.
Yeah.
And so just seeing how that plays out if you're trying something that you like that maybe you're not that good at.
I loved it. And I loved how the homunculus that you accidentally named Cloaca completely encapsulated in the perfect way.
Oh no, yeah, totally, absolutely, off to the worst possible start.
Sheer panic of, oh
Yeah.
no, this is
No,
not the I
wait,
should have picked.
wait, no, no. Brennan just latching on with his little claws,
Yep.
the monster that he is.
I loved it. And then how has Gorga grown, but also how have you grown as a player and performer since playing him in sophomore year?
Since sophomore year, um, gosh, I'm trying to think of what has specifically happened since sophomore year. It's so weird because it has been, it's one year in between the two stories, but in real life it's like 4, I don't know,
Yeah.
3 years, like it's been a while. Um, so I think in that amount of time, like as a player and a person just purely from understanding D&D, like I started DMing, I started, like doing a lot of other things that made me feel like I holistically understand the game a lot better. Um, and I think like there is this sort of want to have like the most optimized character possible in a lot of things where like I don't know. I think what is interesting to me as I play more in D&D is usually the inverse of that of like what is the worst thing I can, like or not worst but like not seeking sort of this like meta perfection of a character and just being like I don't know what is interesting actually and like what is like I don't know a real what feels real and I thought that was fun to pursue with this season.
I completely agree. That's one of the things I've loved about the season so far is that half of you are going, I did not understand D&D when I built this character. This is not built.
Allie's for dexterity or
This is the best thing ever.
Absurdly low. Yeah.
How did Gorgug feel kind of in that fight in the like astral plane mall where you guys were all put in danger again by like Kristen's god dying again and kind of having her own struggles kind of fall in on the rest of the group again?
I think for a lot of us at the table, like when that happened and like seeing what it can be like for like, it's just almost like you're just kind of getting an interesting lens of like the challenges your friends face.
Yeah.
And sometimes people's challenges, I don't know, create more implications for you, which I think is true to life. And I also think like I think Gorgug and all of us, no one, I think we all understand that it's like a pretty unfair situation to be the sole person responsible for your god's like health, so
at 16.
I think we all, yeah, at 16, which is a lot of pressure. So I think like I think we're all kind of learning what everyone else is dealing with. I also think there's this like kind of layer of deja vu of like, you see Kalina again, you have this sort of like this rage stuff that was alluded to in the second season, that, like, that we're seeing again, or like it is confusing in a lot of ways, but it's also fun, like kind of fun to revisit. And for me as a player, I'll say very cool battle set.
Yes.
Which was just fun to see these like absolutely shredded wizard people. So a lot of feelings happening all at once.
I love that Gorgug is the one who clocked that the crystals are probably related to Lydia Barkrock. That felt to me almost like a vindication moment when Porter was like, I don't think you're the right kind of barbarian. It's like, no, Gorgug's very good at this and understands things. So what for you was going kind of through your head in that moment where you were the one to like latch onto that when others didn't?
We see these stories through like very much through the lens of our characters. And because of I think I latched onto that just because of the nature of when we first heard about it, I think Lydia is, I believe, a barbarian, and like it sounded, when you hear like when you're a barbarian, you hear about a different barbarian doing something, you kind of take note of that, and so I always kind of clock that as like, is that like what like is that a barbarian thing I have to think about, and so that just kind of stayed with me for that reason. And so when it came up again, I was like, "Oh wow, we're seeing this again! Oh my god!" And so that was oddly satisfying, I think.
I would assume so because that was such a great moment. And then, can you talk to me a little bit about Gorgug's relationships with his two kind of big teachers now? Because I thought it was very interesting how you talked about Gorgug feeling uncomfortable that Porter's putting like these weird expectations that adults sometimes do put on kids versus like the young artificer teacher who's like, this may a crazy amount of work, but I like kids who are hard workers more than like just natural talent. So let's do this. Like, how does he feel with those two kind of acting as very different mentors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like yeah, he's being pulled into kind of two different directions. And I think it is true that even from teachers that you don't necessarily agree with, if you try to listen to what they're saying, maybe you can find a worthy lesson in there. But also like they're not every teacher is going to be right,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, and so I think Gorgug is in that situation. He's like a 16-year-old having to listen to two different adults, and like it is very complicated to parse like what you take and what you don't take when you're that age, because you have to give a lot of authority and respect to the people in those roles in your life. So that can be really complicated to parse. I think like in many ways he obviously thinks Porter's being unfair to him, but is trying to find the silver lining of that and trying to find how to best go about that, even if this guy's kind of being a jerk.
I do love that Porter loves Fig, and Fig is just endlessly.
Yeah, Fig's academic route very different than Gorgug's right now. I definitely didn't buckle down. I was when I was in high school, I was like, wait, everyone else is, I think there's an adventuring party where we kind of talk about this, but like suddenly realizing, oh, all of my friends have been like actively working towards getting into good schools when I was sort of hanging out. Uh, it's we all have our own journey with school.
And I love that we see all the bad kids struggling with really different questions. What has been your favorite and kind of maybe most surprising element of that with this season?
A thing that I feel like I love everyone's stories and how they're pooled this season. I think one that really resonates with me as a person is just like uh, when I think of Riz is like trying to be the glue of everything and like trying to like just make sure everyone's taken care of in this you know um, I don't know, like paternal or maternal way. Like, he's just like very um he has this like extra goal of making sure everyone else's passes, which I think the way that he's looking out for people is so it's so sweet. It's like it's very touching, and I think that's just been a fun story to see on top of like a fun character.
Especially because Kristen and Fig make it so difficult.
Yes. Yeah, it's fun. And, it's fun to see Adine like having to like work and like Fabian dealing with like what he thinks being cool and popular is, like which is and I think an interesting and new version of that than previous seasons. So I think it's just cool to see everyone trying to like actively kind of pursuing what they think they want or trying to define that for themselves.
And then I have to talk to you.
This cat is just sort of
That's so cute. I have to talk to you about the rat grinders because you guys like got back to school and had arch nemesis all of a sudden. What was that like for
about it.
The table when Brendan basically went, here's the alternate version of you guys?
It is so fun to have sort of nemesises, like nemesi. I don't know what the word. And I think it really makes me laugh how much we instantly did not like them, and for reasons that are just like I think story-wise are just supposed to be hints at like you're not going to get along with these people versus like signs of anything worse than that, and just having like a name like Copper. God, I'm gonna get it wrong. Copper Lily.
Kipper Lily
Copper Kettle. Kipper Lily Copper Kettle. Like that can be enough to be like I hate this person. and that is not deserving of that, but like it's just been really fun to see like the different things like that they're power leveling and stuff, and just really ignoring what we felt is important, and they're really going a route that we don't appreciate.
I did love the response, what are you, 4 dogs? I thought that was just
just the quickest answer to that. Oh, it really makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Obviously, and then Beardsley's just mom bred dachshunds, so that is so specific to them. It's so funny.
So great. That was just such an instant response. I was like, how did that pop into your head? So I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Your brain is just its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting kind of seeing a group of, I guess you could say adventurers, but they don't really seem to care about adventuring.
Right. They approach it in a very different kind of clinical way that um ours is mostly like we're friends who are trying to help each other, and
Yeah.
theirs seems like I don't know how much I kind of forget, like
Yeah,
when we filmed the seasons, it's such a
we
blur.
haven't super
Yeah.
like seen a ton of them interact, but that within itself is weird because they don't seem to hang out for the most part, other than a couple of them that we met at the shrimp party for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, like it is like investigating any other friend group, it's weird. They're
Yeah.
weird.
And then we
uh,
had a lot of like relationship status changes going into the season. What inspired the decision to have Zelda and Gorgug kind of split off screen?
in thinking about these characters and like what it is like to be in high school, I do think that that is kind of what felt to me like a maybe more accurate experience versus like, okay, or what are you going to do? Go through 4 years of high school dating and then get married? Like
Yeah.
it didn't, that didn't quite resonate as like true feeling to me. And I just thought it made sense to have kind of just a change with the character, and obviously Zelda's a great character, and that was such a sweet time in their lives. But I think it just felt to me like more true to the experience of being in high school, kind of.
I do love that this is the split that had no drama, and then you have Kristen just losing her mind when she talks to Tracker.
Yeah, right. That's uh, talking about who's on the lap. Like that whole scene is Allie just staring. Breakups can take many forms.
I think we should strive more for Gorgug style.
Yeah, it's all okay. It's just they're just no longer dating.
Um, so we had a little bit of a teaser for the next episode, and it seemed very interesting because it was a lot of dice rolls. Because it seems like it's the episode that's kind of like how in the first season we didn't hit every single day of what was happening. We would skip ahead. It feels like that.
Yeah.
But have stakes. What like is there anything you can tease about how that was just a very maybe different experience than what you've had before without saying like what actually happens?
We have some dice rolls that affect some. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it without remembering what is exactly said in the trailer.
Yeah, Brennan kind of said at the end, you guys were going to roll dice for things like popularity and grades and investigation and stuff. And then the trailer basically was just like, these dice rolls have really high stakes.
Yeah, that is true. I think it's how, in previous seasons, we haven't really had to do this because there is this compounding focus on academia and the stakes of having a good resume on top of whatever mystery and things we're trying to figure out on top of that. So we're feeling the pressure of time, and this season we have a mechanic in place that shows us that like there are only so many hours in the day, and you have to choose. You have to make choices about what you can do because you can't do everything. And so everyone is presented with that and chooses different things. And so it's a really interesting mechanic that I think is really on point with the story that's trying to be told this season. So I really like it. I think it's going to be fun for people to see how that manifests.
So it seems like the big mystery that got introduced at the end of this episode was tied to another dead god after we just saw Kristen's second god die. What was kind of going through your guys' head when you realized, oh, this might be more connected to that aspect of the lore of Spire versus like dragons and the Nightmare King and things like that in the first two seasons?
I think in the past, we've touched on some God stuff, but maybe it wasn't the central focus of things.
Mhm.
Outside of kind of the Nightmare King kind of is sort of, like, but it does feel like an area where a lot of us are really out of our depth in exploring it. I think it's like it's interesting. Brennan is so good at like cosmology, kind of God stuff, that it's cool to learn more about what that is in Spire, because up until now, like stuff is alluded to, and like honestly, like a lot of it is like mentioned in sort of a joking way. That this is an area in which it like does have real stakes, and really does feel like it's going to matter for us, and like that there is something at the works that feels like at a very high level of uh, danger, I guess. So I think it's fun to just see what, like, as a player, it's just really fun to see what that is Inspire. Uh, and I think it's just fun to explore that stuff.
I love it as an audience member. And then one of the things I'm curious about, because this is the character that you guys all started with when Dimension 20 started, and then you've played so many and then coming back to it. How do you connect to Gorgug either the same or differently than when you first played him?
Yeah, I think like Gorgug has grown and a lot since the first time we see him. He was a lot more shy and like uncomfortable in himself the first season. And as he's grown, I think like he's still kind of skews sort of nerdy and shy in some ways, but like is comfortable with his friend group. And I do remember feeling that way a little bit about high school, of just like at a certain point, um, you are more comfortable, or I was at least. And like as you get older, it's like it's less like I'm looking up at all these like seniors and juniors and sophomores or whatever. Like it is a surrounding in which I understand a little better, and so
Yeah.
that can create a little more comfortability. And so like I think it's just gaining more like quiet confidence, I guess. Like it's not like he's like cocky or anything like that. He's just sort of like is more comfortable. Um, so it's fun to see, like, once you kind of stop worrying about some more of the social aspects of things, like you can, I don't know, like flourish in other directions, and I think he's doing that right now.
I completely agree. And I cannot wait to see more of Gorgug, because he's just such a fun and like kind character, which is not what you expect with a librarian, but I love it.
Oh yeah, he's a sweetie. Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait for more. I could talk to you about this all day, but I'm gonna let you go.